I sat sullenly on the roof, looking down at the people bustling about below. Is this place really haunted? I mean, the mansion is old enough, it seems plausible. This is a historic mansion, passed down since the time of the first emperor. But recently, strange things have been happening here, causing His Majesty a great deal of trouble. They say the ghost of a woman who died unjustly keeps appearing. He's definitely talking about me. They say anyone who comes here gets hurt, has nightmares every night, and can't stand to stay for even a single day. It must be the work of that female ghost. That's not right, he should get his facts straight. I was just minding my own business when you bastards came barging into my mansion. They seemed eager to get it over with, preparing for the wedding with only the barest of formalities. Amidst the busy adults, a small child dressed in a black suit sat with a pale face. He was a cute-looking boy with impressive snow-white hair and yellow eyes. He couldn't have been more than 7. Not a single one of them is even looking his way. Is this really going to work? What can we do if it doesn't? His Majesty ordered it. The humans' voices drifted up to me. I perked up my ears and focused on their conversation. Still a spirit wedding? I wonder if this will actually appease the ghost. Why not just perform an exorcism? They say we have to soothe the wrathful spirit. Apparently, just getting rid of it would bring ruin to the imperial family. That kid is basically a sacrifice. He looks so young, it's a pity. But do they really need to dress him up like that? He looks like royalty. We just need to do as we're told. Don't pay any unnecessary attention. It seemed they were deliberately avoiding paying him any mind. Looking closer, they were all sneaking glances at the boy while keeping their voices down. Just then, the man who appeared to be the highest ranking of the priests approached the little boy. You know you have to repay us for giving you a place to sleep and food to eat all this time, right? What kind of bullshit is that? Saying something like that to a kid who's barely out of diapers. The boy couldn't say a word and lowered his head. The priest just snickered and patted his head condescendingly. Just then, the priest said to the boy, "An orphan like you, worse than a sewer rat, should consider it an honor to finally be of some use to the imperial family." Wow, this bastard really knows how to be an asshole, doesn't he? Even a third party would be furious, but the boy, insulted to his face, couldn't react at all. No, rather than anger, he seemed terrified. The boy, who had been silent, finally spoke. As the boy's emotional outburst drew the attention of the crowd, the priest's expression hardened. His snickering sounded like the laughter of a demon. Watching all of this unfold, I scowled. Wow, what human garbage, to do something like this to a child. I was about to kick them all out, little groom and all, but then I realized the child would likely die without anyone to care for him. He has no one on his side here. It's unlikely he'd have anyone out there either. But who is this kid, really? It was a question I'd had from the beginning. The way the underlings whispered about him being royalty and the priest's cryptic words. Putting it all together, it sounded like they deliberately dressed him up to look like royalty. But I don't see any signs of magic or potions being used. Something felt off. The boy stood before a white coffin prepared by the priests, looking like someone facing their own death. I assumed the coffin, draped in white flowers and a veil, was meant to represent the ghost bride, me. Do you, the groom, Lucian? No, Lucian Odelian, swear to cherish, love, and spend your life with the ghost bride. The rush ceremony had somehow already reached the point of exchanging vows. At the priest's question, the boy bit his lip hard. As the silence stretched on, the impatient priest raised his voice. Do you, the groom, Lucian Odelian, swear to cherish, love, and spend your life with the ghost bride? The boy trembled at the shouted demand. The humans around him showed no sympathy, instead grumbling that he was just wasting time and should have answered sooner. It was heartbreaking to see that among so many people, not a single one was on his side. Still sitting on the roof, I let out a deep sigh and reluctantly descended into the middle of the wedding ceremony. Do you, the bride, the ghost bride, swear to cherish, love, and spend your life with Lucian Odelian? How utterly ridiculous, calling a coffin the ghost bride. The others seemed to find it funny too, as I could hear faint snickers. The boy's shoulders slumped even further. I didn't like this situation one bit. I answered curtly while manipulating my mana. The coffin rattled, and a strong wind whipped up around it. The faces of those holding back laughter instantly turned pale. It was amusing how a simple trick could scare them so easily. Serves you right, you bastards. Who do you think you are, you cowards who can't even look a ghost in the face? Even the priest who had been tormenting the boy tried to rush the end of the ceremony at the strange phenomenon. I watched with satisfaction, crossing my arms and chuckling. But then a strange sound came from beside me. I turned my head to see the boy looking askew in my direction, at my lower body, to be precise. He shouldn't be able to see my feet, since I'm a ghost. The thought had barely crossed my mind when the boy's eyes rolled back in his head. The boy's sudden collapse stunned the priest and the others. I was just as bewildered. I watched the people crowd around the boy and scratched my head. Did he actually see me? No, if he could, he would have seen me sooner. I was sitting on the roof watching the whole time. Sigh, he must have a weak constitution. It happens sometimes. Humans who can see my afterimage, and maybe he saw me because I was exuding a lot of energy just now. The priest hastily concluded the ceremony, and the servants began to move about hurriedly, preparing to leave. They stood around awkwardly, leaving the fainted boy on the ground. What do we do with him? Just leave him, our job is done. What if His Majesty gets angry that we didn't finish properly? I squatted down next to the boy, watching to see what kind of garbage these humans would pull next. We can't just leave him here indefinitely. We don't know when he'll wake up. Besides, it looks like it's going to rain soon. Damn it, then what are we supposed to do? There's no other way. One of us will have to take him inside the mansion. The three stared at the mansion with stiff faces. To them, it must have looked like an abandoned house swarming with ghosts. How rude, I take great care of this mansion. The atmosphere might be a little gloomy, but I pride myself on it being cleaner than other mansions. Unable to hear me, they started to decide who would go inside. In the end, the priest who had been tormenting the boy was chosen. He glared at his relieved colleagues and reluctantly picked up the boy. At the taunts of his colleagues, who had immediately changed their tune now that it wasn't their problem, the priest's face contorted as if he were swallowing his anger. The others fled frantically beyond the gates. That bastard, I told him to leave the money and food. I was clicking my tongue while looking out the window when I heard the boy groan. I looked from the moaning boy on the bed to the wet spot the priest had left behind and sighed deeply. Oh, what have I got myself into? I had a feeling the mansion was going to be quite noisy for a while. I have no name. Age, I haven't bothered to count since I turned 100. Appearance, can't say, I don't have a reflection. I know nothing about myself, but I've lived in this old mansion for some 300 years now. I am a ghost, a spirit bound to this very mansion, to be precise. I don't know when I died, or why I became a ghost unable to leave this place. Ever since I became self-aware, I've been a ghost, wandering the mortal plane, unable to pass on. So why is a ghost like me suddenly talking about all this? Because, for fuck's sake, today is my wedding day. Seriously, why are they holding my wedding on their own damn terms? Humans are just impossible to understand. And to top it off, the groom is that tiny little boy. Watching the child tremble, biting his lip hard, I clicked my tongue. What did that poor kid ever do to deserve this? Even I, a ghost, feel sorry for him, but it seems these humans are incapable of such emotions. He was a child who still needed an adult's care. That must be why I was so concerned. But that kid, his spirit is weak. He fainted just from seeing my afterimage at the wedding. There was no guarantee it wouldn't happen again. The life the boy had lived so far flashed before his eyes like a panorama. It was a continuous, unhappy life devoid of any joy. He wanted to be happy, at least in his dreams, but having never known happiness, he couldn't even imagine it. Lucien's eyes shot open as he sat bolt upright. His heart pounded like crazy, and a cold sweat trickled down his back. He couldn't seem to calm down, likely from the consecutive nightmares. Lucien clutched his heart tightly and collapsed back down. After catching his breath for a long while, Lucien recalled the dream he just had. He felt a sense of longing for that person, as if he might cry. That can't be right. I don't have any memories that would make me miss someone in the first place. Despite being at an age for childish dependence, Lucien had matured early and quickly reigned in his heart before any expectations could form. Before long, the afterimage of the dream had faded far away. Lucien belatedly realized this was not the room he usually stayed in. After staring blankly for a moment, Lucien finally remembered that he had married a ghost bride. A chill shot down his spine. Lucien shivered and quickly hid under the covers. He may have been mature, but he was still only an 8-year-old child. After what felt like a long time, Lucien finally mustered his courage and emerged from the blankets. Looking around, he was quite surprised at how clean the room was. No, it was more than clean, it was magnificent. It was far more elegant and filled with expensive furniture than the place he had stayed in until now. Firewood was burning in the room's fireplace. Even though it was spring, the temperature difference between day and night was significant, making the nights quite chilly. But thanks to the fire, the air in the room was pleasantly warm. Come to think of it, his clothes had been changed into pajamas at some point. Seeing the neatly organized room, it was clear someone's hand had been at work. He thought he had been utterly abandoned in the mansion, left to live with the ghost bride. But to think there were people here, what a huge relief. Lucien got out of bed and opened the door to find someone. With an eerie creak, the door opened to a hallway lit only by candles. But even the candlelight couldn't dispel the gloomy atmosphere. He didn't want to take a single step out of the room. His tactless stomach was clamoring to be fed. He hadn't been able to stomach any food since last evening, so he was hungrier than usual. If he had known, he would have eaten every last bite of food he had. I sighed, watching the round, white-haired head ascend the stairs. Since the child was going to be staying here, I felt I should at least look after him. So I lit the fire in his room and turned on lights here and there to keep it from being too dark. Lucien decided to explore the mansion, grabbing a lamp before heading out. When he descended the stairs, he found the first floor was so spacious you could run around and play. And just like his room, it was clear at a glance that every corner was well maintained. Putting off his tour of the mansion for later, he began searching for the kitchen to find food and people. Lucien, who had thought at least a simple meal would be prepared, was taken aback. Lucien's energy instantly drained away. Being hungry, cold, and scared made him feel inexplicably sorrowful. Lucien's eyes welled with tears as he sniffled. Just then, something bumped against his foot. His joy was short-lived as Lucien wondered where this potato had rolled from. Fortunately, the kitchen appeared right away. Looking around, he saw a couple of boxes in a corner filled with potatoes and other ingredients. There was only flour, potatoes, sweet potatoes, onions, meat, eggs, and other uncooked ingredients. Lucien's shoulders slumped. It seemed they wouldn't go as far as to cook for him. Just as he was about to sink into depression, Lucien snapped his head up and shook it from side to side. Lucien gathered some potatoes and sweet potatoes in his arms and scurried up to the second floor. His plan was to roast them in the fireplace in his room. He had survived on potatoes instead of proper meals before, so he was used to this much. Without any help from an adult, Lucien prepared to stand on his own 2 feet. I just left the ingredients the humans had brought in the kitchen. I figured he could at least make a fried egg. Even if he's a kid, shouldn't he be able to handle some simple cooking? I let him know where the ingredients were because it looked like he might die otherwise, but I could hear Lucien muttering to himself from the second floor. Seeing the little kid unable to even roast a single potato made me feel inexplicably guilty. I debated whether I should make something edible and bring it to him, but I shook my head. Why should I? I've given him the mansion, lit the fireplace, and cleaned the room. Isn't my job done? He might be a kid, but whether he starves to death or not is none of my business. Right, absolutely. That kid is an unwelcome guest, to begin with. He should be grateful I'm not kicking him out. As I brainwashed myself and chuckled, my consciousness kept drifting toward the second floor. Other humans had lived in this mansion a few times before. It never bothered me this much back then. He was a child who still needed an adult's care. That must be why I was so concerned. Normally, I would use a person's weak spirit to chase them away, but knowing the child had nowhere else to go, I couldn't bring myself to do it. Sigh, it's my mansion, but I can't even do as I please. For the time being, it seemed I would have to monitor the child's movements and stick to areas he didn't frequent. I had no desire whatsoever to get involved with humans. Observation log, the kid, day 1. The kid started wandering around in the morning. He was still timid, but he seemed to have gained some courage once the sun came up and brightened the mansion. Every time he entered a room, the kid would exclaim things like, "Wow, whoa, and it's so big." It was rewarding to see my hard work in maintaining the mansion appreciated, which made me feel proud, but at the same time, I felt a pang of pity. He also kept looking for people, thinking someone was here. But I knew they had all left without a single person remaining, so watching the kid's actions tugged at my heartstrings. I think I might have to pretend to be a living person for a while. Today, as if he were on a quest, he began to thoroughly explore every room in the mansion. No matter how well I've maintained the place, there are a few rooms that are genuinely as spooky as a haunted house, so I locked their doors to keep him out. He seemed disappointed by the locked doors, but it's better than him getting scared and becoming withdrawn again. This mansion, as you can tell by the fact that I've lived here for 300 years, has a long and storied history. As such, it contains all sorts of artifacts and ancient texts, and even the newest items are at least 50 years old. I'm bound to this mansion, so I don't know how different it is from the outside world. Judging by the kids' curious poking around, it seems quite a few things have changed. Well, 300 years have passed. It would be stranger if things hadn't changed. That damn kid, he tore a book I cherished. It's true the book was old and brittle, but it's also his fault for not handling it carefully. Did you think putting it back on the shelf would make it like it never happened, you little brat? Today, again, the kid made a rough meal of potatoes and sweet potatoes. I had cleaned the kitchen just in case, but it seemed he was completely unable to use the cooking utensils. I was going to just watch since he wasn't starving to death, but it's getting frustrating for this ghost to see. After 5 straight days of filling up on only potatoes and sweet potatoes, the kid himself looked sick of them. Moreover, the other ingredients were being neglected, and some had started to rot. I didn't want the mold to spread to the other food, so I sorted them out and threw the bad ones away while the kid was gone. I felt sorry for the kid, eating only potatoes and sweet potatoes when there was so much other food. I'm thinking of secretly dropping a cookbook for him tomorrow. The kid found the cookbook, but even after looking at it, he showed no sign of trying to cook from it. He skipped over the easiest recipe, fried eggs, and was staring at a complicated turkey dish. Seeing only 5 potatoes and sweet potatoes left, the kid finally started using the kitchen. He used his head and lit the stove with his lantern. As if trying to cook in his own way, he examined the various utensils before placing a plate on the stove. In the end, the kid caused an accident. The plate heated up and shattered. The accident didn't end there. When the plate broke, sparks and shards flew out and the nearby ingredients caught fire. The flames shot up in an instant. The kid panicked and ran outside to get water. The moment he was gone, I quickly used magic to extinguish the fire. The mansion was almost burned to the ground. I thought maybe he wanted to eat meat, but, looking closer, I saw the turkey recipe section had a lot of pictures. It seems he can't read. The kid returned with a bowl of water and was relieved to see the fire gone, but his expression soon soured. Half of the ingredients were gone. The kid ended up clutching the one remaining potato and went upstairs. Kid observation journal, day 10. Ever since the kitchen fire, the kid hasn't come anywhere near the kitchen. He seems to be scared of cooking, but there are no more potatoes or sweet potatoes for him to eat. After filling his belly with nothing but water, the kid cracked an egg, probably intending to eat it raw. Oh dear, it seems the egg was left at room temperature for too long and had partially incubated. A chick came out. The kid fled the kitchen. Kid observation journal, day 14. The kid's cheeks have gotten hollower with each passing day. Now even the carrots are gone, so there's nothing left for him to eat raw. What's more, over half of the few remaining ingredients have rotted. The rumbling from the kid's stomach is constant. The kid didn't eat a single meal today. At this rate, he's going to die. I stopped writing in my observation journal and let out a scream. I just couldn't bring myself to write anymore. Lowering the pen I had floating in midair, I flew to where the kid was. Passing through the wall, I saw the kid curled up on the bed. The rumbling of his stomach echoed loudly in the silent room. The small mound he made under the covers flinched, and he curled up even tighter. He was desperately trying to endure his hunger. The kid hadn't eaten since lunch yesterday. For the 4 days before that, he'd had only one raw meal a day, consisting of subsistence crops with little to no nutritional value. He's only held on this long because he's a child. An adult would have collapsed long ago. Damn it, how many days has it been since he got here? To check the observation journal. I started writing it the day after he arrived, so today is the 17th day. More than half a month has passed. They said ingredients were supplied once a month, which means there are 13 days left, roughly 2 weeks. Damn it all, how could they not check on him even once? I was furious. They had to have known the child couldn't cook, yet they abandoned him all alone in this huge mansion. I had my suspicions when they just dropped him off on the day of the wedding and left. Still, I thought, surely they'd come by once a week to see if he was dead or alive. That surely not came back to haunt me. What are they going to do if he starves to death? I couldn't take it anymore. At this rate, I'll have a corpse on my hands. If it were an adult, I wouldn't care if they lived or died, but this is a little kid who can't even read. If a child starves to death and becomes an earthbound spirit here like me, it'll just be a nuisance. I'm definitely not doing this to help him. I just don't want another earthbound spirit like me in the mansion. I quickly flew down to the kitchen and checked the remaining ingredients. I should be able to make some bread or oatmeal. It was a good thing I'd been tidying up bit by bit while the kid was away. I had already organized spices like salt and sugar into glass jars, and I'd put the other ingredients in their proper places. First, since the kid hasn't had a proper meal in days, I should make something easy to digest. Oatmeal is the only option, right? I immediately took out the oats, salt, and other necessities. I lit the hearth, brought over a pot, and started toasting the oats. To think I'd be cooking in this lifetime, or, well, this afterlife. It goes without saying, but ghosts don't feel hunger. We can't eat, so we have no reason to cook. Even so, I'd watched the humans who lived in this mansion cook, and I had memorized every single book in the library, so the methods were stored in my head. The reason I can hold objects and clean the mansion despite being a ghost is because I can use magic. Normally, one uses the mana within their body to cast magic, but since I don't have a body, I use the mana floating in the air around me. After about 300 years as a ghost, you pick up a few tricks. I picked out the blackened oats and ground them finely. Now just add milk and it's done. The milk came from a goat that sometimes wanders into the yard. I couldn't smell it, but it looked more or less right. Still, it seemed a bit plain, so I sprinkled in some salt. How much should I add? The cookbook just said to taste and season appropriately. But since I couldn't eat, there was no way for me to taste it. I just went with my gut and dumped some in. When it seemed about right, I poured the finished oatmeal into a dish. The kid is starving, so he'll definitely react strongly to the scent of oatmeal. I hurried over to the kid's door with the oatmeal. Then I opened the door just a crack and gently blew a breeze inside. After about a minute of this, the mound on the bed twitched. It smells delicious. It worked. The kid swallowed hard and got out of bed. Before he could open the door, I took the oatmeal and headed down the stairs. Thankfully, the kid followed the scent, slowly making his way to the kitchen. Just before he entered, I placed the bowl of oatmeal on the dining table and hid myself in a cupboard. Seeing the steaming oatmeal, the kid's face lit up. He then practically shoved his face into the bowl. He's going to burn his tongue like that. Unable to keep his mouth still from the heat, he calmed down a bit and started blowing on it before eating. Hearing him say it was salty, I flinched. It seemed I'd added too much salt. I'll have to use less next time. But the kid ate the oatmeal with a gusto that was heartwarming to see. He must have been incredibly hungry, despite the saltiness. When he had finished the bowl, the kid stared blankly at the empty dish. There was more oatmeal right next to him, so I wondered what he was doing, until transparent droplets began to fall into the bowl. Why is he crying? I was taken aback. It's delicious, so delicious. For a moment, I was at a loss for words. How lonely and difficult it must have been for him. Married to a ghost at such a young age, abandoned alone in a mansion, unable to even eat properly, it must have been unbelievably hard. The kid cried quietly for a long time. Through his tears, he ate another bowl of oatmeal, washed the dishes cleanly, and stored the rest in a corner. Long after he left, I remained in the kitchen, unable to move. Right, let's stop this. I threw the observation journal I'd kept in a corner of the kitchen into the hearth. 15 days of entries turned to ash in an instant. Despite that, my heart felt lighter. First things first, I have to keep the kid alive. It seems I've grown attached to him after observing him for half a month. I became curious what the kid, who always seemed to be crying or looking gloomy, would look like when he smiled. Laying in bed, Lucien burst out laughing. Who could it be? Was it the person who was here on the first day? To be honest, he thought for sure he was going to die yesterday. He was hungry, he couldn't cook, and there was nothing to eat. He could have gone outside and eaten some grass, but he didn't want to go that far. No, rather than that, he'd wished he could just drop dead. He thought dying would be easier than living alone in this vast, empty mansion. But when death was actually at his doorstep, he was scared. He had wished for anyone at all, to reach out a hand to him. And then, a miracle happened. But why won't they show themselves? He was curious why his benefactor, whose face, name, and gender he didn't know, wouldn't reveal themselves. Could it be that they weren't allowed to reveal their identity because of orders from the imperial palace? I just want to say thank you. Lucien's shoulders slumped in gloom, but he quickly shook his head. First, I'll try looking for them again. Lucien drifted into sleep. I emerged from the shadows and wrapped him up. Forget the thank yous. Just grow up quickly. Once he's grown up, I'm going to kick him out of this mansion immediately. The next morning, after tasting a bit of everything, Lucien discovered the green broccoli. Having never seen it before, he had no idea what it was. This must be delicious too, right? So he fearlessly popped it into his mouth. Lucien's smiling face slowly hardened, then melted. This was a betrayal. To think something so awful could exist among such delicious food. Lucien had a long staring contest with the broccoli before pushing it to the side. Treating it as if it didn't exist, he devoured everything else. The plates were empty in an instant. My eyebrow twitched when I saw the clean plate, with only the broccoli left behind. He was starving to death just yesterday, and now he dares to be a picky eater. I followed Lucien. He went to the stream at the border of the garden and the forest. Just before leaving, he noticed the rather large pile of laundry. I don't really know how, but I just have to soak it in water and then take it out, right? Right. Before, he had only resented having to do everything himself, but now he felt proud, as if he had become an adult. Seeing him try to do it himself should have been commendable, but for some reason, I started to feel anxious. What followed was a total disaster. The kid just dipped the laundry in the water and pulled it out, getting rocks and sand tangled in the fabric. Unaware that he needed to scrub them, he only dunked them, leaving the stains untouched. This wasn't washing clothes, it was soaking them in muddy water. Still, he was trying his best, even breaking a sweat. By the time he was about 2/3 done, Lucien was exhausted. He stumbled back into the mansion, his legs trembling like a newborn fawn. Only after confirming he was completely gone did I quickly retrieve the ragged clothes. Sigh, if you don't know how, you should just leave it alone. Still, should I praise him for trying to do it himself? Since it's come to this, I'd better finish it before the kid gets back. I levitated all the laundry into the air, separating each piece so they wouldn't overlap. A brilliant white light erupted, enveloping the laundry. Soon, the clothes, once filthy with weeds, dirt, and grime, became spotless. Just then, I heard Lucien coming out of the mansion in the distance. I hurriedly folded the levitating clothes, placed them in the laundry basket, and hid inside it. Lucien plopped down, then shot back up in surprise when he saw the empty stream. He finally checked the laundry basket. Seeing the clothes, which were clean at a glance, he was bewildered. I watched his reaction with bated breath. Could it be my benefactor came by? What's this about a benefactor? Before I could fully process his words, Lucien shot up and started scurrying around. It looked just like he was searching for someone. After about 10 minutes, Lucien returned, his shoulders slumped. They must have left already. The kid's yellow eyes began to well up with tears. Fortunately, he quickly wiped his tears without needing any comfort. Then, with reddened eyes, he shouted, "Benefactor, thank you. Breakfast and last night's dinner were delicious." His voice echoed through the forest. I stared blankly at the scene. The kid's cheerful laugh tickled my heart. He then picked up the laundry basket I was hiding in and headed into the mansion. Thanks to that, I was able to observe the kid's face up close for the first time. Hollow cheeks, dry hair, and slightly sunken eyes. Was it because he had starved for the past few days, or had he always been malnourished? But his eyes shone as brightly as the sun, like a child filled with hope. It was a look impossible to have in such a desperate situation, and I found myself staring intently at him. This feels strange. Have I ever been thanked by anyone before? The humans I'd seen, until now, had always reacted with shock or terror, spewing curses and trying to drive me out of this mansion. As a being who can't mingle with humans, I'm used to that kind of situation, but I had no idea how to react to this. Of course, that would change if he knew my true identity, wouldn't it? I know the kid mistakes me for a person. It was a bit bittersweet, but it couldn't be helped. I just wanted the kid to keep showing me that smile he wore because of me. Even if it meant lying to him. I was planning to make something delicious with the meat I'd frozen with ice magic, but now the plan has changed. I brought a little meat and a lot of the remaining vegetables to the table. This way, he'll have no choice but to eat it. I smirked deviously and started dicing the vegetables with vigor. Thanks to the delicious food, Lucien was full again today, but something felt off. It was because ever since he'd left the broccoli behind, it had appeared in every single meal. The more he picked the broccoli out, the more of it there seemed to be. On top of that, there was a drawing of broccoli next to his plate. Seeing it emphasized sent a chill down his spine. He knew he wasn't in a position to be picky, but he couldn't help that he hated it. After a long deliberation, Lucien made up his mind and stuffed all the broccoli into his mouth at once. Chewing with a pained expression, as if eating something inedible, Lucien's frown slowly eased as the taste of the sauce hit his tongue. After chewing for a while, he finally swallowed. Lucien stared blankly for a moment before gulping down some water. It was tasty enough to erase the horrible memory from the first day. The texture was still not great, but it wasn't unbearable. I'm a grown-up now. Broccoli isn't scary anymore. Lucien was so proud of himself for overcoming this hurdle that he couldn't stop grinning. Watching Lucien finish his meal, I slipped out of the cupboard and let out a disbelieving laugh. Honestly, becoming a grown-up over a piece of broccoli, don't be ridiculous, kid. It was absurd, but I couldn't stop snickering. As I was about to finish cleaning the kitchen, a piece of paper on the table caught my eye. A new, unfamiliar drawing had been added to it. I burst out laughing. A crooked drawing of what might have been a sun or a flower was scribbled on it. I stared at it for a long time before taking it to my room and hiding it in a corner of my bookshelf. It's not that it's precious or anything, it just seemed like a waste to throw it away. Justifying it to myself, where no one could hear, I gave a happy little wiggle. But the fact that he can't read is bothering me. He looks to be about 7, so he should have learned to read a little by now. The fact that he can't read a single letter weighed on my mind. It's not like there's anyone here to teach him, either. It wasn't just reading. The kid was lacking in many areas of his education. It wasn't that he was slow, but rather that he seemed to have received no age-appropriate education at all. If I could, I'd teach him myself. But he doesn't even know I'm here, and he can't see me so. But while it might be fine for now, the day will come when he has to leave the mansion. By then, he'll need to have learned some basic knowledge and manners to get along with people. Maybe I can ask that guy. I thought of the guy who visits the mansion every so often. I looked through my diary, and by calculating the timing of his previous visits, figured he should be stopping by again soon. When he comes, I'll have to find a way to ask him to teach the kid. He's a strong individualist, so I don't know if he'll agree, but I don't have any better ideas right now. He's been eyeing a few things in the mansion anyway. If I give him one of them, he'll probably agree to teach the kid how to read. I started racking my brain, trying to figure out how to persuade him. An unfamiliar sound reached Lucien's ears, the sound of a horse. Lucien looked up and scanned his surroundings. Through the window, he saw someone approaching the mansion. It was the first person he had seen in the month since he'd arrived. In that instant, all thoughts of his benefactor and the ghost bride vanished from his mind as he dashed outside. James, age 18, lamented his fate as he led a pony pulling a cart. Having just joined the Imperial Palace staff a month ago, James was the lowest of the low, which was why he'd been stuck with an errand to the haunted mansion. The cart was loaded with supplies for the mansion, a small amount of money, food, and clothes. Why on earth would a place as obviously empty as a haunted mansion need any of this? Among the Imperial Palace servants, the haunted mansion was the subject of whispered ghost stories. No one knew when the mansion, perched conspicuously on a forest slope not far behind the palace walls, had been built or for what purpose. Rumor had it that it existed even before the empire was founded, which would make it at least 300 years old. Stories of a ghost haunting the place were so rampant that occasionally, reckless youths would go there to test their courage. Countless were said to have entered boldly only to faint or collapse, foaming at the mouth. Should I just leave? The moment he reached the fence, he was hit with the urge to turn right back around. No one had come with him, and it was far from the palace. No one would know if he just went back. And it looked like there was a hefty sum of money in there. James slyly tucked the money pouch inside his tunic. "Excuse me." I didn't touch anything, I swear." A voice from somewhere made James's heart plummet, and he hastily made an excuse. He looked behind him, but no one was there. "Excuse me, mister." This time, the voice came from right in front of him. James and Lucien stared at each other with terrified eyes. After a long moment, they both let out a sigh of relief. "You scared me. Who are you?" "You should make some noise or something. Where did you even come from? Wait a minute." James's grumbling trailed off as he recognized a familiar face in the boy before him. It was the same noble face he had glimpsed just 2 days ago while bowing his head. The color drained from James's face, and he hurriedly bowed his head. "Please forgive my impertinence, Your Highness. I have spoken out of turn. I never expected to see Your Highness here. Please, spare my life." As James suddenly began to grovel on the ground, frantic, Lucien could only watch in bewilderment. "Please raise your head." How could I dare to look upon the face of the Crown Prince? But I'm not the Crown Prince. "Pardon." Confused, James snapped his head up. But no matter how he looked, it was the Crown Prince. As he started to lower his head again, he felt something was off and looked at Lucien's face once more. "Then who are you?" "I'm Lucien." "Lucien, who's that?" The completely disjointed conversation left them both with question marks hanging over their heads. In any case, James was deeply relieved that the boy wasn't the Crown Prince. Still, his striking resemblance to the Crown Prince and his golden eyes, the symbol of the imperial family, lingered in James's mind. Even if he wasn't the Crown Prince, it meant he was royalty. He couldn't understand why a royal child would be in an empty place like this. Suddenly, the head chamberlain's words from just before he left came to mind. "Whatever you see there, you saw nothing." "Pardon, what do you mean by that?" "Exactly what I said. Don't you go blabbing about whatever you might see. I'm telling you this for your own good." At the time, he'd thought it was just a threat, but now he realized it must have been a warning not to tell anyone he'd seen this child. "Oh, food." Lucian's exclamation snapped James back to his senses. Yes, I was ordered to leave this here. Oh, so you're from the Imperial Palace. Basically, yes. Lucian's expression brightened instantly. Then, mister, do you know who works here? Someone lives here. Pardon? Are you, by any chance, Lucian, sir, living here? Seeing the look of shock on James's face, Lucian gave a bewildered nod. So, do you happen to know who works here? I'm sorry, but I don't know anything. I've never heard of anyone living here. This is an abandoned mansion, so it's not maintained. People don't come here. Lucian's face grew pale. The sight of the small child trembling was so pitiful that James felt a pang of unease. Well, I was just sent to deliver this, so I'll just leave it and go. He had originally planned to just drop the things by the fence, but now that he'd met Lucian, he had no choice but to move the supplies inside. James led the pony to the mansion entrance. Lucian followed slowly behind him, a dazed look on his face. Glancing at the boy, James began unloading the supplies at the entrance. As he set down the last box of clothes, he felt the heavy weight in his tunic, the money he had secretly pilfered. For a moment, he was conflicted about whether to return it. You do well to leave it all behind. Just then, a strange voice echoed not in his ears, but inside his head. He timidly raised his head in fear and saw, not too far away, something with disembodied legs floating in the air. A terrifying maiden ghost lives there. They say she sucks out all of a man's life force. Why, of all times, did the words of his colleague come to mind? Barely able to breathe, James trembled as he placed the money pouch from his tunic on top of the box of clothes. And just like that, the mysterious legs that had been visible moments before vanished. Wow, is this all for me? James, who had been standing there dumbfounded, took a sharp breath and clutched his wildly pounding chest. I have to get out of here, now. I'll be on my way now. I'll be back in a month. Before Lucian could stop him, James was already far in the distance, leading his pony away. Left all alone, Lucian watched James's retreating figure fade away before looking down at the boxes. He said no one was here. His benefactor was clearly here, yet the man claimed there was no one else but him. He wanted to deny it, but he couldn't bring himself to. Because I've never seen another person here. They just appear and disappear like a ghost. Lucian stood blankly for a moment, then rose and trudged weakly up the stairs. The boxes were left abandoned at the entrance. About 3 minutes after Lucian had disappeared, the ghost bride appeared. She stared vacantly toward the stairs where Lucian had gone, then began to tidy up the supplies one by one. Soon, her afterimage faded, and the entrance was once again pristine, all the boxes gone as if they had never been there. The wide-open door swung shut, and silence enveloped the mansion once more.